Okay, I want to talk about the cycles of I. And so we're going to talk first about the first four powers of I. I, by definition, is the square root of -1. So this is called the imaginary unit. So let's go to I squared. I squared can be rewritten as I times I, which is the square root of -1 times the square root of -1, which I can write as the square root of -1 squared. Now what happens when you square something that's also being square rooted is that the root and the square vanish. And all you're left with is what's on the inside. I cubed is I squared times I. But we already know what I squared is. I squared is -1. So now we have -1 times I, which is -I. I to the fourth, can I make sense of this? Sure, you and I both can. I to the fourth is the same as I squared times I squared. But since we already know what I squared is, we can substitute. That's -1 times -1, which is +1. Now something truly cool happens after this. After the fourth power, it turns out that this cycle repeats itself. And so every power divisible by 4 returns to the value of 1. Here's a quick t-chart that I made that we can memorize. On the left is the power of I, and on the right is the result. I to the first is I to the second is -1, I to the third is -I, and I to the fourth is 1. So okay, now let's see if we can make sense or understanding of even higher powers of I. Can we understand I to the 17th? Yes. You see, I to the 17th is nothing more than I to the 16th times I. And 16 is perfectly divisible by 4. Now in this first example, I'm going to rewrite I to the 16th as I to the 4th raised again to the 4th. I won't do that again, but let me at least do that once. So if this is I to the 4th raised to the 4th, we already know that I to the 4th is 1. So this becomes 1 to the 4th times I, but 1 to the 4th is 1. So this is 1 times I, which is just I. So it turns out that I to the 17th is equivalent to I, and the reason being is because if I take 17 and divide by 4, I get a remainder of 1. Okay, how about I to the 26? Well, the largest number that's divisible by 4 but still less than 26 is 24. So I to the 26 can be broken as I to the 24 times I squared. 24 is perfectly divisible by 4, so that becomes 1. I squared is -1, and so now I have 1 times -1, which is -1. And that means that I to the 26 is equivalent to -1. How about I to the 83? Well, 83 can be written as I to the 80 times I to the 3. 80 is perfectly divisible by 4, so that becomes 1. And we know what I to the third is. It's -I. So this becomes 1 times -I, which is -I. Lastly, I to the 104. Well, 104 is itself perfectly divisible by 4, so that means that I to the 104 is equivalent to 1. One more expression and then I'll let you go. Here I have -25 I to the 19th. So what I do is I separate the I to the 19th. This becomes -25 times I to the 16th times I to the third. 16 is perfectly divisible by 4, so that becomes 1. I to the third is the same as negative I. So now I have negative 25 times 1 times negative I. And so my final answer is 25I. And this is how the cycles of I work. They repeat every 4 powers. I to the fourth is 1, and then after that, the cycle repeats. God bless you, wherever you are today.